That's pre-measured out for the bottle size. So put one droplet in the bottle, then you can just fill right out of your bottling bucket or whatever and go that way, and let them carbonate naturally like you would with the priming sugar. It's just pre-measured sugar like the priming sugar is. Second way is, which is what the commercial breweries do, counter pressure bottle fill. Work awesome. They're a little complicated to get the hang of at first, but after a couple of uses it kind of makes a little bit more sense. So you'd fill your whole keg up, let it get carbonated. If you wanted to then fill bottles off that, or growlers, this guy would go down. You want to set it so that it's a little bit off the bottom, and that cork seals at the top. With carbonation, you want to keep that carbonation suspended in the liquid. So as soon as it doesn't have pressure on it, that's where you see the bubbles forming. So this cork then seals it to keep pressure on the bottom. Little lower guy is called a pressure relief valve. You just crack that open so it hisses. Purge it with CO2. So one line would be CO2 in, one line would be your liquid line in. Purge it with CO2 to get all the oxygen out of the bottle. Start filling it. As soon as you reach your fill mark, shut it off. Quick cap it. And it works with growlers too. You just got to change out the cap size on it. Nice way if you're going to be entering a beer competition or something to get in and have nice clean beer, because then you're not going to have the yeast fall out and stuff on the bottom, which generally, at least the beers I've entered, have been frowned upon for having yeast sediment or hop sediment or something down the bottom. Any questions on any of that? Questions on filters? Questions on anything?
So how would you run 2 kegs off that one?
Sure. That is something that I didn't touch on, and I should have. I do apologize for that. If you were hooking up multiple kegs up to a single regulator, you can run up to 8 kegs if you want, 10 kegs off of one regulator. A couple different ways you can do it. I've got parts laying up here somewhere. You can take this valve out and put in a Y splitter. Y splitter allow you up to 2, so you can have 2 gas lines coming up. The other way, which I like a little bit easier, because it's a little easier to clean up your lines, is the manifold. So you'd have a piece of hose coming from your regulator into here. Now you've got the capability to run up to 3. I think these go up to 6 on the manifold style. I run the Cornelius regulator with a dual regulator, and I run 4 out each side. So whether or not I run 4, all the time, very rarely, but twice a year if I have a party up at the cabin or something like that, I've got the capability to run 8 at that point. So it's a real easy way to split off your gas. Again, check for leaks. You've got, instead of having 3 spots that you're going to be leaking, now you've got 6, 8 spots. So definitely check for leaks. Brings up another good point on clamps. 2 different styles of clamps. Standard hose clamp that you use for a screwdriver to tighten it up, and what's called an ear clamp. These ear clamps hold about 60% more than the thread-on style regular, or just radiator clamp, I guess is what I was looking for. On the ear clamp, use one of these guys. Just a little nips. Put the ear clamp on the hose, crimp down the little tab on there, and it'll seal and work very well. If you're going to be doing a lot of kegging and playing with a lot of stuff, these are never going to come loose on those guys. You have to cut them off to get them off. The other ones, sometimes you'll get the hose pressed out the little holes, and once in a while you got to go back and tighten them up. And it's a nice alternative to getting stuff clamped down. Keg lube, yes. Keg Lube's a product that it's a food grade lubricant. A lot of times people put them on their O-rings and stuff to increase the longevity life of the seal, make sure things seal up. I generally don't use it. I do have some of it at home, but very rarely use it. Haven't really found the need to get it to seal up. Once in a while, if you've got a stubborn lid seal, it'll help kind of pop that lid seal up into place, but generally I haven't found too many uses for it. What else was I going to touch on? Sure.
The length of your beer line, I think, is important.
Oh, very good question, yes. Length of the beer line. There's two different sizes of beer lines generally that get used, 1/4 inch and 3/16. 3/16 beer line is kind of recommended for homebrewers. I'm not sure why that is. Might be the length. Generally, we're not running long distances. 3/16 beer line, you're going to want to have about 6 feet of it. So if you've got a tap set up on your fridge, make sure you've got 6 feet coiled up in the fridge. There's a mathematical equation that says diameter of the hose, pressure that it's under, and you want it to equal 0 at the tap. I'm not a math guy, but it works out at about 6 feet on 3/16 line. It'll help with your pour. A lot of times you'll pour your glass, people come in and say, I can't get the thing from foaming. They've got big line on it. So the smaller line will help decrease foaming issues too. End up with more beer than foam. Thanks for bringing that up.
For how long can you leave it in the keg before you use it, carbonate it?
Sure. Lifespan of your beer in the keg is going to, there's a lot of variables in that. Style of beer, your lager beer, you're going to have, the lifespan's going to be a little bit lower. The 3 to 6 month window. You can age stuff in kegs. So if you've got a stout porter or anything like that, you can age it in your keg, cellar it. Depends on your sanitation practices. You're real adamant about cleaning and sanitizing your stuff all the time, it'll last for a long time. I've had stuff in kegs for up to 2 years, I think is the longest I've gotten. So, nice way you can stack up your kegs too. I'm a winter brewer. I brew in the winter. Summertime I find other things to do, like sit on the lake. But, so I'll get all 13 kegs full come spring and then be able to serve from those for, most of the summer.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, I'll usually store mine with carbonation on them. Just, oxidizing is a huge, comes into play the longer you store stuff out. So if you're going to store it for an extended period of time, put 8 pounds on it, 10 pounds on it, let it sit, bleed the pressure valve a couple of times to get that oxygen out of the headspace that's going to be in the keg. And let it sit. Periodically come back, check to see if there's pressure on it. Because if you've got a real slow leak, over the course of 3-4 months with not having anything hooked up to it, it's going to bleed out. So periodically walk by and check them out to see if, they still have pressure on them.
Does it need to be refrigerated, or you can leave it in one side of the garage or something?
Yeah, you're not going to want to store it in your 100-degree garage during the summertime. It'll start to spoil. But cellaring, I've got a spot underneath my front steps that stays about 45 degrees. I'll stack the kegs in there and then just label them, what's in what, and cellar them for a fair amount of time. If you do have a ball lock system or a pin lock system, it's pretty easy to interchange. So a lot of people will find, I hear this more often than not, that my neighbor is a Coke dispenser and he gave me all these kegs, Wish I had neighbors like that, but I don't. So it's fairly easy to get the right fittings. Fittings run about $5. So if you find a keg that, a ball lock versus pin lock, you don't have to go all ball locks on your system. You don't have to go all pin locks. You can mix and match. Just a matter of swapping out the fittings. On the fittings themselves, on the threaded guys, they come with what's called a 1/4" MFL. I think MFL stands for male flare something line. I don't know. Could be making that up. What it is it's a tapered fitting on the end. On the fittings themselves, the threaded guys, they come in two different kinds. So these are ball lock versus pin lock, but they're both gas connectors. They come with a barb on them. Again, I like using the threaded stuff because you can take them apart, you can interchange your fittings and stuff and aren't having to cut your lines all the time. On the threaded one, they come with what's called a swivel nut. So that guy just threads onto there, can then take it off at a later date. On the swivel nuts, on the fittings themselves, these guys have little plastic ends. You can see the red tip on there. Plastic and metal always will seal up better than metal on metal. So that's a fine connection. If you have to seal it, metal on metal, a lot of times if you're using, sometimes the connectors that come out of the regulators are just male MFL stainless pieces, and you want to throw in a little washer. It's called a swivel nut washer. So metal on metal, you always want to make sure you have plastic in there. When you're going on to the connectors, you can use just use the connector itself. It's a plastic tip. Talked about cleaning these guys earlier too. See if I can get one apart without a screwdriver here and that. Once in a while I'll clean these guys. More the liquid post all the time that has sticky beer running through it. Top will on thread. You'll get that piece.